Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm playing host right now. Samantha is here, but she got a little sidetracked with a little something, but she will be joining us here and as soon as she can. Um, so I'm here with Samantha, Catherine, Jason, and Lori, who has finally made it on after about 6 weeks of fighting with her computer, and we're so glad to have her back. So with that, I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves, and then we'll get started with The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And we're in the Kindle book. We're on page 99. So if you want to follow along, I'm not sure where it is in the actual book, but maybe hopefully you can find it there. And with that, go ahead, everyone. Jump out.
Lori Evans in Denver.
Jason Roberts here in Santa Tampa, Florida.
I'm not sure if Samantha's going to be able to pop out. Probably not. So she's here. And then this is Catherine Clement. And I'll be doing the reading. So let me flip over here to my Kindle. All right. Standing, waiting for her were two smartly dressed people she didn't recognize, and one she most definitely did. He was wearing a suit and was clean shaven in this life, his hair side parted and businesslike, but he was the same Joe. His dark eyebrows as bushy as ever. That's the Italian in you, as their mother used to say. Joe? What's more, he was smiling at her, a big, brotherly, uncomplicated smile. Morning, sis, he said, surprised by and a little awkward from the length of the hug she was giving him. When the hug was over, he introduced the other two people he was standing with. This is Priya from Gulliver Research, the people organizing the conference, obviously. And this is Rory, obviously, from Celebrity Speakers. Hi, Priya, said Nora. Hi, Rory. So nice to meet you. Yes, it is, said Priya, smiling. We're so pleased to have you. You say that like we've never met before, said Rory with a booming laugh. Nora backtracked. Yes, I know we've met, Rory. Just my little joke. You know my sense of humor. You have a sense of humor? Good one, Rory. Okay, her brother said, looking at her and smiling. Do you want to see the space? She couldn't stop smiling. Here was her brother, whom she hadn't seen in 2 years and hadn't had any semblance of a good relationship with in far longer, looking healthy and happy and like he actually liked her. The space? Yeah, the hall, where you're doing the talk. It's all set up, Priya added helpfully. Bloody big room, said Rory approvingly as he cradled a paper cup of coffee. So, Nora agreed, and was led into a vast blue conference room with a wide stage and around 1,000 empty chairs. A technician in black came up and asked her, What do you fancy? Lapel or headset or handheld? Sorry? What kind of mic will you want up there? Oh, headset, her brother interjected on Nora's behalf. Yeah, headset, said Nora. I was just thinking, her brother said, after that nightmare we had with the microphone in Cardiff. Yeah, totally. What a nightmare. Priya was smiling at her, wanting to ask something. Am I right in thinking you've got no multimedia stuff, no slides or anything? Her brother and Rory were looking at her, a little concerned. This was clearly a question she should know the answer to and didn't. Yes, she said, and then saw her brother's expression. I don't. Yes, I don't. I don't have any multimedia stuff. And they all looked at her like she was not quite right, but she smiled through it. Peppermint tea. 10 minutes later, she was sitting on her own with her brother in something called the VIP Business Lounge, which was just a small, airless room with some chairs and a table offering a selection of today's newspapers. A couple of middle-aged men in suits were typing things into laptops. By this point, she had worked out that her brother was her manager, and that he'd been her manager for 7 years since she'd given up professional swimming. Are you okay about all this? Her brother asked, having just got 2 drinks from the coffee machine. He tore a sachet to release a tea bag. Peppermint. He placed it into the cup of hot water he'd taken from the coffee machine. Then he handed it to Nora. She had never drunk peppermint tea in her life. That's for me? Well, yeah, it was the only herbal they had. He had a coffee for himself that Nora secretly craved. Maybe in this life she didn't drink caffeine. Are you okay about all this? Okay about all what? Nora wondered. The talk today. Oh, yeah. How long is it again? 40 minutes. Sure. It's a lot of money. I upped it from 10. That's very good of you. Well, I still get my 20%, hardly a sacrifice. Nora tried to think how she could unlock their shared history, how she could find out why in this life they were sitting together and getting along. It might have been money, but her brother had never been particularly money motivated. And yes, sure, he's obviously been upset when Nora walked away from the deal with the record company, but that had been because he wanted to play guitar in the labyrinths for the rest of his life and be a rock star. After dipping it a few times, Nora let the tea bag free in the water. Do you ever think of how our lives could have been different? You know, like if I had never stuck with swimming? Not really. I mean, what do you think you'd be doing if you weren't my manager? I manage other people too, you know. Well, yeah, of course. I know that, obviously. I suppose I probably wouldn't be managing anyone without you. I mean, you were the first, and you introduced me to Kai, and then Natalie, and then Eli. So she nodded as if she had any idea who Kai and Natalie and Eli were. True, but maybe you'd have found some other way. Who knows? Or maybe I'd still be in Manchester. I don't know. Manchester? Yeah, you remember how much I loved it up there at Uni. It was really hard not to look surprised at any of this, at the fact that this brother she was getting on with and working with was also someone who went to university. In her root life, her brother did A levels and applied to go to Manchester to do history, but he never got the grades he needed, probably because he was too busy getting stoned with Robbie every night, and then decided he didn't want to go to uni at all. They chatted a bit more. At one point, he became distracted by his phone. Nora noticed his screensaver was of a radiant, handsome, smiling man she had never met before. She noticed her brother's wedding ring and feigned a neutral expression. So, how's married life? Joe smiled. It was a genuinely happy smile. She hadn't seen him smile like that for years. In her root life, Joe had always been unlucky in love. Although she had known her brother was gay since he was a teenager, he hadn't officially come out until he was 22, and he'd never had a happy or long-term relationship. She felt guilt that her life had the power to shape her brother's life in such meaningful ways. Oh, you know Ewan. Ewan. Nora smiled back as if she knew who Ewan was and exactly what he was like. Yeah, he's great. I'm happy for you both. He laughed. We've been married 5 years now. You're talking as if me and him just got together. No, I'm just, I sometimes think that you're lucky, so in love and happy. He wants a dog. He smiled. That's our current debate. I mean, I wouldn't mind a dog, but I'd want a rescue. And I wouldn't want a bloody Maltipoo or a Bichon. I'd want a wolf. A proper dog. Nora thought of Voltaire. Animals are good company. Yeah, you still want a dog? I do. Or a cat. Cats are too disobedient, he said, sounding like the brother she remembered. Dogs know their place. Disobedience is the true foundation of liberty. The obedient must be slaves. He looked perplexed. Where did that come from? Is that a quote? Yeah, Henry David Thoreau, my fave philosopher. Since when were you into philosophy? Of course. In this life, she'd never have done a philosophy degree, while her root self had been reading the works of Thoreau and Lao Tzu and Sartre in a stinky student flat in Bristol. Her current self had been standing on Olympic podiums in Beijing. Weirdly, she felt just as sad for the version of her who had never fallen in love with the simple beauty of Thoreau's Walden or the stoical meditations of Marcus Aurelius, as she had felt sympathy for the version of her who never fulfilled her Olympic potential. Oh, I don't know. I just came across some of his stuff on the internet. Oh, cool. We'll check him out. You could drop some of that into your speech. Nora felt herself go pale. I'm thinking of maybe doing something a little different today. I might improvise a little. Improvising was, after all, a skill she'd been practicing. I saw this great documentary about Greenland the other night. Made me remember when you were obsessed with the Arctic and you cut out all those pictures of polar bears and stuff. Yeah, Mrs. Elm said the best way to be an Arctic explorer was to be a glaciologist. So that's what I wanted to be. Mrs. Elm, he whispered. That rings a bell. School librarian? That was it. You used to live in that library, didn't you? Pretty much. Just think, if you hadn't stuck with swimming, you'd be in Greenland right now. Svalbard, she said. Sorry? It's a Norwegian archipelago way up in the Arctic Ocean. Okay, Norway then. You'd be there. Maybe. Or maybe I'd just still be in Bedford, moping around, unemployed, struggling to pay the rent. Don't be daft. You'd have always done something big. She smiled at her elder brother's innocence. In some lives, me and you might not even get on. Nonsense. I hope so. Joe seemed a bit uncomfortable and clearly wanted to change the topic. Hey, guess who I saw the other day? Nora shrugged, hoping it was going to be someone she'd heard of. Ravi. Do you remember Ravi? She thought of Ravi, telling her off in the newsagents only yesterday. Oh, yeah, Ravi. Well, I bumped into him. In Bedford? God, no. Haven't been there for years. No, it was at Blackfriars Station. Totally random, like I haven't seen him in over a decade, at least. He wanted to go to the pub, so I explained I was teetotal now, and then I got into having to explain I'd been an alcoholic and all of that I hadn't had a glass of wine or a puff on a joint in years. Nora nodded, as if this wasn't a bombshell. Since I got into a mess after Mum died, I think he was like, who is this guy? But he was fine. He was cool. He's working as a cameraman now, still doing some music on the side, not rock stuff, DJing apparently. Remember that band me and him had years ago? The Labyrinths? It was becoming easier to fake vagueness. Oh, yeah, the Labyrinths. Of course, that's a blast from the past. Let's see, that's a blast from the past. Yeah, I got the sense he pines for those days, even though we were crap and I couldn't sing. What about you? Did you ever think about what could have been if the Labyrinths had made it big? He laughed, a little sadly. I don't know if anything could have been. Maybe you needed an extra person. I used to play those keyboards Mom and Dad got you. Did you? When did you have time for that? A life without music. A life without reading the books she had loved. But also a life where she got on with her brother. A life where she hadn't had to let him down. Anyway, Ravi wanted to say hi and wanted to catch up. He only works one tube stop away, so he's going to try and come to the talk. What? Oh, I wish he wouldn't. Why? I just never really liked him. Joe frowned. Really? I can't remember you saying that. He's okay, a good guy. Bit of a waster, maybe, back in the day, but he seems to have got his act together a bit. Nora was unsettled. Joe? Yeah. You know when Mum died? Yeah. Where was I? What do you mean? Are you okay today, sis? Are the new tablets working? Tablets? She checked in her bag and started to rummage, saw a small box of antidepressants in her bag. Her heart sank. I just wanted to know, did I see much of Mum before she died? Joe frowned. He was still the same Joe, still unable to read his sister, still wanting to escape reality. You know we weren't there. It happened so fast. She didn't tell us how ill she was to protect us, or maybe because she didn't want us to tell her to stop drinking. Drinking? Mom was drinking? Joe's worry increased. Sis, have you got amnesia? She was on a bottle of gin every day since Nadia came onto the scene. Yeah, of course, I remember. Plus, you had the European Championships coming up, and she didn't want to interfere with that. Jesus, I should have been there. One of us should have been there. Joe, we both. His expression frosted suddenly. You were never that close to Mom, were you? Why this sudden? I got closer to her. I mean, I would have. You're freaking me out. You're acting not quite yourself. Nora nodded. Yes, I think you're right. I think it's just the tablets. She remembered her mother in her final month saying, I don't know what I would have done without you. She'd probably said it to Joe too, but in this life, she'd had neither of them. Then Priya arrived into the room, grinning, clutching her phone and some kind of clipboard. It's time, she said. All right, we'll stop there.
Oh, that was terrific. You did such a great job reading. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
I love it when you read. I'll go back again. I've said it before. You remind me of my grandmother when she used to read to us before bed and stuff. Everything came to life when she read it. It's like you were almost like right in the middle of it, and you make it feel like it when you read. So there's a bit in here, and I'm not sure kind of where, because this one's just kind of. This one's different than the other ones. There were clearly stuff I felt I could pull out of the others and, pinpoint and pick. This one is kind of ambivalent. It's like maybe this was the one where I wonder if this one's the one that's more closest to what she thought her life might be like if she had really followed the Olympic dream thing, and not the one with where her father was. I think where her father was a little more in there, but this one and the fact that her and her brother are getting along, I think she really wanted that, but didn't know how to obtain it. Now that she has it, she's very unsettled by it. It's so foreign to her. But outside of that, it makes me I don't know. I'm just not sure on this one.
Well, it's interesting that it seems to be speaking a little bit to how we have so many roles to play in our own life as well as the lives of people that we are around. We're around, and then also a little bit to the dynamics of her family, and she seems to be, while remembering what was going on during that life path, making some connection between what she did and maybe what she hadn't realized like how much she realized or how much she hadn't realized that she had wanted a different relationship or with her parents and her brother.
It's all that family crap.
But you bring up a good point, Jason, that because even now, as after reading this and now after hearing what you said, thinking about like within my own family dynamics, I picture things as one way. I'm sure they picture things as another way. And then the reality, if you were to look down, like say from above, would be a whole different picture. And if we could see that picture, that's probably the more realistic idea of what our realities are, in a sense, and how we really operate. But we get so into our zone, or whatever you want to call it, because like, maybe, like Nora always perceives certain things about her family, but maybe there were aspects of what this life is showing. And I'm starting to think that maybe all of these lives are all variations within her actual life. And out of that, hence where decisions are made and how we move forward, and how we put all those outside things out there into this little funnel, so to speak, I guess, and how we move forward. Because I'm betting that if I were to really look at all the aspects of even my life, there are aspects of the types of lives of what I've dreamed about, or what I thought how my life could be if I went a certain direction. But I bet you some of those elements are actually within this life, and I just don't realize it.
I think it's crazy how each one of us has our own perceptions, perspectives, egos, all of this experiences and expectations, all types of things that affect everything that goes on, and especially a family situation, because everyone perceives it differently, receives it differently, and has different expectations and desires. And that's what makes the world go round.
Yeah, kind of like we each hand off a baton of reality to each other, but we're sort of stuck holding the same baton ourselves of what our own perception of things are, unless we're really willing to delve into and ask the questions to learn what other people are coming, where other people are coming from. It kind of flashed me back to the beginning of the book, where the character was a lot more, I want to say, apathetic, or just less interested in in living and making the most of everything in her life. And now, as she's going through these different life paths, she's a lot more interested in figuring things out, and how everyone felt, and where everyone was, and how everyone, what the dynamic was. So just an interesting contrast. It might not mean anything, but it was just interesting.
Oh, I actually think you make a good point, because in the beginning of the book, she really did not want to live, because she really felt her life had no substance, no value, no nothing, that she had no real value. But now, having gone through some of these lives, I think she's realizing that there is value even into her own life, and how you deal with that ultimately affects other people's lives, and can change. The slightest little change in you can bring out the biggest change in the outcome, and in your life and in somebody else's life. And I think we all forget that. Sometimes we get so blinders on and in our own lives like this, and we're, and I've done it. I'm going to admit I've done that to where I forget that anything that I'm doing or anything that I'm, reacting to or whatever, especially within, family confines and stuff, it's going to have an effect that's going to trickle and eventually, like in other books we read, how we act, how we feel, how we respond will eventually trickle out there into the world. But as it goes, it kind of gets a little bit bigger and goes. And interesting.
It's amazing that every single thing everybody does creates a ripple in the fabric and how it affects each person. There's no way you can predict everything. And so we just do the best we can with what we feel, think, and believe and perceive, and try to do the best we can, I guess.
But in doing that, I think we sometimes forget that our little ripple and our little decision can really have an impact everywhere else on those around us, and that continues on in other areas and other aspects into other people. And I think she's realizing that through going through this now, especially with her brother, how in this life her and her brother get along. He's her manager, so obviously there's a trust there that with her brother in this life that she didn't have in a lot of these other lives that she's. So, and that's probably, it sounds like that's something that she really wants. But in, the first life we saw, she just felt like anything she did was not good or of any value or worth it, because she couldn't see the impact that it ultimately could have. And she perceived everything as bad, and she took it internally as bad and wrong, and so therefore it made her feel like she wasn't worthy and valuable, and so therefore she wanted to die.
I think that as I age, I recognize more how my actions affect other people, because I have more people relying on me, and it makes me very aware of certain decisions that, maybe I would made differently or gone about a different way to be in a different place. But I mean, I see too many perfect miracles happen every day. I get too many messages that say everything is exactly as it's supposed to be. So, kind of like us or her in this book, I can catch you up in 3 seconds, Lori. She's just trying on different lives. Like, well, what if, let me live a life where me and my brother get along? Because she was missing that relationship. It's a cool way to look at it. We do need to recognize that these are all just choices, and they could be options, like you said, Dan, in her, what she's calling her root life. She's referring to her root life as the one that we started with at the beginning of the book. But we don't have to die and come back in a different reincarnation to have a better relationship with somebody. Sometimes relationships can be repaired here on the physical realm. Sometimes they can't. But they can always be repaired on the spiritual realm, on the soul level. So, it's all this stuff, the ego stuff that we can't get past in this life in order to repair those relationships, that can still be done on the spiritual level. And there's no resistance on the spiritual level like there is here in 3D land.
Yeah, so there's yeah, you want to take that into consideration. There, we may want changes with our relationships. They may not even, they may be more possible in the afterlife, but they're just as possible now if we put in the efforts, I guess, is what I'm getting from that. Also seems to shed light a little bit more on how there's a kind of a time and a season for every phase in our lives. You know, how for her, when she was, for the main character, when she was pursuing her swimming career, how that had a different effect on everyone. I wonder, like in this path, if it had the same effect on her father from the previous one, where her father had kind of gotten on a health kick because he was more, he was around her lifestyle more, and whereas even though it seemed like she was pursuing her swimming career, she wasn't so close with her mother. So, and her mother, was drinking. So it's not like it had the same effect on her, and all that kind of apparently seems to have had an effect depending on the proximity or the closeness of her and her mother. So it's interesting how our willingness to be part of other people's lives can have can have an effect on our own lives. We sort of sometimes assume that, well, if I'm more selfish and care more about myself, then I'll be better off. But sometimes it's the opposite, and I wouldn't say it's always the same throughout our entire life, but at different phases and seasons of our lives, we might need more or less of that, I think.
Interesting, because you're right. Because in her father, the life with her father, where she focused on swimming, he did get the health kick and stuff. So it almost seems like what I'm gathering out of putting all this together after what you just said is that Nora's trying to have all the close connections with her brother, her father, and her mother, which are the three people that she really wanted the connections with, where in her root life, I don't think she, maybe with the exception of her mom a little bit, really felt she had in any. So that's why she loved Voltaire so much, and why she was really attached to him. She kind of, displaced, and used a cat as a way to, which I think we all tend to do. I think in some ways we all tend to find that one person or family member, or, if we don't have that, we find something that will take the place of the things that we're really wanting and try and ascribe things to that. Because as I think it's showing is that no matter how which direction and which choice we make, is not going to be the choice that's going to ultimately include everything and make everything right. Every decision will play itself out in the way it's supposed to play itself out. But I think on this side of life, there is no perfect life, even though we're all trying and trying to get there and reach that and achieve that and wanting that so desperately. But if we're honest, I think the best life we can do is do the best one we're going through right now, and understand that we're not always going to make the choices that are going to keep everything perfect, because there's just no way to do that because of how we react. Other people will then react based on what they're going through and what they're dealing with and what they're thinking and how they perceive a perfect life is supposed to be. And that's the rub we all rub up against. It's, everything's conflicting, because nobody's one life is going to be exactly the same as everybody else's either.
Thank goodness. How boring would it be?
Very, very boring it would be. I wanted to take us back to that Thoreau quote, if I can find it. Disobedience is the true foundation of liberty. The obedient must be slaves. I think we can talk about that. I was funny, that caught my eye because at some point this morning I read something about how, don't get so upset with your kid. Don't expect your kids to just have blind obedience to you and everybody, like all authority figures. Like the way I was raised as a kid, if somebody was 2 hours older than you, they were your elder, and you better like do what they say and have, there was no questioning authority or anything like that. It was a whole different world. You guys know, you old ones in here. Yeah. Yeah. You get your ass beat. I mean, quick. Like, there was some comedian that used to talk about, and maybe it was Bill Cosby, he used to talk about his mom throwing shoes across the room or whatever. I mean, it was quick. Like, you did not question authority, but now as an adult, and as much as I hate it, like, when you're trying to get kids to do something and they're not doing it the way you want it, I still am like grateful when I see that bit of rebellion. Like, it scares me because I know how I did and I don't want them to do like I did. But at the same time, like, I'm happy to see that bit of disobedience because it means that they are a free thinking soul, individual, and they're not going to just follow blindly behind anybody that's 2 hours older than them and supposedly is their elder, because there's a lot of quote crazy elders out there. Like, you don't want them following everybody. You want them to be able to stand on their own and stand against bullies, or just, even a teacher or somebody who is trying to get them to do something that they know is not right. I mean, unfortunately, we see it in the news all the time. Teachers and sports coaches and things that are, doing sexual things with the kids or whatnot. And because, especially, remember the big like Olympic thing blow up with the coach that was, what amazed me was how all the other people let it go on. They knew it was going on, but nobody put a stop to it. And so I want my kids, and I pat myself on the back sometimes when I'm rebellious, because it's important to know yourself well enough, to know what you believe well enough that you're willing to stand on that ground against somebody that has a different opinion, because really that's all it comes down to, right? Is different opinions about things. People have different opinions. They have different morals and values, and even individually with each one of those, that's completely different from anybody else, except it's a little bit alike whatever, who raised them to be like that. It's kind of like them, but even still, it's individual for each person. And just because somebody has a different opinion doesn't mean that theirs is right and yours is wrong, or yours is right, theirs is wrong. It's just two different opinions. But I'm really, I like that quote because I kind of treasure even when I'm aggravated that the kids are misbehaving, I'm still like, yes, they can stand up for what they believe. I love it.
What was that quote again? Because I'm having a hard time finding it, but because a thought came to my mind when you read it, but I'm having a hard time finding it. But can you read that again?
Yeah, it's oh, I think I lost that page.
Uh-oh.
No, wait a minute, I'll find it again. Disobedience is the true foundation of liberty. The obedient must be slaves.
And going on what you were saying, I think that's kind of how people kind of, in some ways, kind of react to their lives. Because there are times where people kind of go, well, I'm just a slave to my life. My life is just it's whatever it dictates to me. But sometimes we have to be willing to disrupt it, be disobedient in it, and be willing to kind of step outside that box of where we're at, because I think sometimes we get so like caught up in it, like Nora was in a root life, where she didn't want to live anymore, and she just felt, going back to what I said earlier, she just felt like she had no real value. And I think sometimes we have to shake up our lives a little bit to keep it from getting to that point. And I think sometimes we all, we can all get to that point where, oh, well, it's just, my everyday, this is what I do, this is what, and there's, there's nothing really worth out there. And why am I even here or alive or whatever? I think that's why people can get depressed and, down about their lives. And because they only see that, and we become in a way slaves to our life, because we're not willing to get out there and try and shake up a little bit to do something, to interject a new energy, a new path, or a new aspect to our lives, because we're so afraid too, because we're afraid of the rejection or the unknown or what it might lead to or what it might do. And so I think that's another aspect of, part of this quote can play into too.
Also, the aspect of if we're constantly living in the past and having regrets about our decisions in the past, or what we're blaming situations or people for what went on, then you're occupying the now and the present with the feelings and thoughts and basically your we were talking about perception earlier with your reality is your perception, and if that's what you're perceiving is something from the past, then you really can't live in the present. You can't use the now and the current your current situation. You can't make the best of your current season, your current position in life. When you're a kid and you're younger and you can maybe decide to go be an athlete and pursue something like that. That's probably the best time to do that. And when you're older, you're not going to try to and she even spoke about not being able to be swimming later on in life, but that in recognizing that, okay, even though she didn't pursue that early on in her original life path, she went to university and decided not to be a swimmer. She decided to be more of a thinker and less of like going after her original dream and goal. And the early phase of her life, she still did find happiness in other things, but she was also same time looking back and living in her past, and that seemed to have a big impact or take up a lot of time in her present.
Uh, I hear some of what you're saying, but at the same time, why are we, as we get older, why are we so afraid to really try and get out and do new things or change or jumpstart? Because there's nothing wrong with trying and doing something different, because and it's been proven you can do it, if you decide you want to. That's part of, but I think, as we get older, we just get so set in our where we're at, what we're doing, comfortable with how things are, even though we may not be fully happy or where we want to be in life, maybe. And sometimes it gets to feeling like, and I'm going to say it this way, kind of like you just feel dumped on because it seems like nothing changes or nothing good happens or nothing, but who's to say we can't, make a change and decide to do something a little different, and it doesn't have to be a big something, just that little something. And even then, that little something it could affect others, but it might affect others for the positive. See, that's the thing. We don't know how these decisions are really going to play out. All we know is they're going to play out. So we can't necessarily be afraid. And I think that's what Nora did. I think she was in a root life. She got so afraid of trying to do anything because she was so afraid of what the outcome might be. And I think sometimes as we get older, we tend to get that way too. We get like, oh, well, if I really try this, it's really not gonna, or we kind of lie to ourselves in some ways just to be comfortable and okay with where we're at, because we're so comfortable with where we're at, and to change would be so different. But yet the only thing that stays the same is change. And if you don't change, you really, become complacent and nothing. And, you don't grow. And I think
Good.
that's, huh?
Blade.
So,
It really
and
is the
that's,
same decision, right? I mean, like that, when she decided to quit swimming, she gave up on that goal and decided to go to plan B. And you can kind of do that in any part of your life. You pick a plan A and then you overthink it and figure out, oh, well, what if this, what if that? And you decide and you talk yourself out of it, and then you go with plan B. You can kind of do that to yourself at any point in time. So, if the one, I guess, the prevailing life path that has worked out, seems like was worked out the best for her, is the one where she stuck with swimming and worked way through it and won all these medals. But she just had to she just had to push through and not give up on herself on that dream. Not to say that if she had then picked plan B and then picked gone with plan B and not given up on that, but it seemed like that sort of became a giving up on her dreams, sort of or letting things get in the way of her dreams sort of became a, what she became something that she was started to do. And I think that tends to be what, the way it is for a lot of people, a lot of us. Some things you can't help, some things you can make a decision that you, and sometimes you feel like you can't help it. But if you just fight through, who knows, you might overcome and reach your goals and dreams anyway, but you really have to push through to it. I think that was one of her, when she was on the podium talking in front of people, she talked about how, I think it was something like persistence was, keeping her head down and staying in your lane, and, not worrying about the people that were your competition, just staying focused. Something like that is what she was saying. And
You mean I can't swagger?
oh, you can swagger, baby. You can swagger. You just you just gotta focus. You can look good doing it, you can you can have fun with it. It doesn't have to be everything doesn't have to be a chore necessarily, I don't think. Just got to be focused, right?
I don't know. Sometimes it feels like I'm on plan Z and double Z and start over again.
Yeah.
Also, I'm on plan Z.
Just do the best you can with whatever plan you're on. I think it's. I think that we gotta just figure out that we're okay. Make the most of whatever plan we're on, and though it's good, I think, to learn from our past, we've got to be careful not to spend too much time thinking about it or worrying about it, because there's a lot more to learn in the doing of of your new focus and your new plan. Get excited. It's like it's like that idea about being stuck. It's like when you're stuck, when you feel stuck, you've got this, like, it feels like you have this wall in front of you that's keeping you from moving forward, and you've got this force behind you that is holding you back. But then once you decide to make the most of your situation, sort of you get that momentum, you get a little bit of a push from your momentum, and then you get some excitement about it, and start thinking about how it's going to be an adventure and the good things that could come about it. Then you start getting a little bit of a more desire for it. Eventually, instead of a wall in front of you, you've got a force that's pulling you to your goal. And as long as you're focused on the right things, you've got this, you end up having this force that's pushing you, and a feeling that's giving you the momentum, and then a goal that's kind of sucking you towards it. And you just got to go with it and let everything from your past fall away.
Great conversation today, you guys. Samantha, I don't know if you've been able to hear any of what we've said. Do you have any thoughts to throw out, or are you okay? And just there, happy to listen.
Oh, I've just been kind of trying to catch up on on what you've been talking about, but I caught a little bit about the when Catherine mentioned the Thoreau quote about the disobedience, and I'm sitting here thinking about, how do we find this happy medium with the kids? Because with me and the grandchildren, there is this. It's like you want them to have some rebelliousness, but yet at the same time, you don't want it all the time because, I mean, you're struggling to keep a household sane, and when all the kids are constantly just going in another direction, it's really frustrating. But yet at the same time, I look out into this world and all of the things that are going on in the world, and I see how a lot of it is just everybody's going in their own direction and nobody knows what the heck's going on most of the time. And I'm like, how do you prepare kids for that? I mean, it's like, on the one hand, I want to be like, okay, when I ask a child to do something, and in a polite way, which is the same way I would expect them to ask me for something, is that they would cooperate and do it rather than just instantaneously be like, And obviously when they get into school, they're going to have that, they're going to have some level of cooperation. But yet at the same time, when we are talking about these scenarios where kids are, confronted with an adult or an authority figure who is trying to get them to do something that they shouldn't do, we want them to be able to stand up for themselves. And it's so difficult to communicate that with children, at this age. Now, I mean, obviously, if they get a little bit older, into teenage age or a little bit older, where they have a better level of comprehension and understanding, it'll be easier. But yet at the same time, still, how can you prepare a child for this chaotic world that we live in right now? And that's a thing that kind of I'm faced with every day right now with the kids and their age. And like Bailey in particular, she's going on 7 years old. And right now her big thing is she's trying to be like the parents, she's trying to be helpful to the younger children. And she's trying to show what she knows and show how she realizes that, things are dangerous, or they shouldn't do this, or they should help with that, or whatever. And she tries to be like mom and dad, or be like Samon, and try and tell the younger ones what to do and how to do it, and yes and no. And it's just it's an interesting thing to watch, because I see what she's doing and I want to encourage it on some respects, but yet she doesn't understand the nuances. She doesn't understand when it's appropriate to stop a child, like grab her little sister and say, no, stop, because she's doing it over little stuff versus like really scary things that, so it's, I don't know, it's interesting with the kids these days, and trying to find that balance between having them be a free spirit and also being cooperative. So interesting. But and when I got back on here after I'd been messing with my Amazon account issue, you guys were talking about dang it, I lost my train of thought. Oh, how your actions affect other people. And since I didn't have a chance I wasn't able to listen in when you were reading the section, I'm not entirely sure exactly what was being said there, but it is interesting how, for me, when it comes to that, it's like, again, trying to find this happy medium of being myself and following my own, I don't know, wants and desires and life hopes and dreams and all of that kind of thing. And yet also taking into consideration that I live, in a household full, with 4 adults and 3 kids, and trying to find that balance, because it can't just all be about everyone else, but it also can't just be all about me. There's got to be a balance. And if I sit here and I try and think about every single decision and hope that it's going to be good for me and also good for them, then I'd probably go insane trying to think it out. And I'm kind of reminded of something that I tend to tell myself more often than not when I get stressed out about things, is that I just have to remember to trust myself, that I'll do the right thing in the right moment, and also trust in the universe that, you know, like we've said before, is that there's a plan, and there is, you know, there's a path that we're all on, but we all are affecting each other. And yet we also have to just trust that it's the right path that we're supposed to be on. And we have to trust also that everyone around us is on the right path that they need to be on. And that I have to remind myself that I'll just know the right thing to do and the right thing to say in any given moment, and that is the right thing, regardless of whether I feel like I screwed it up, you know, or whether I feel like I'm doing the right thing or not, you know, is that we just have to trust that, I don't know, it's all going to work out in the way that the best way it's supposed to, whatever that might be.
Actually, go ahead, Lori.
That definitely brings into account the fact that who determines what is right and what is wrong and how it should be and who should do what. And just, it's all good. Gotta live and let live.
And I was going to just kind of say that's a great way to sum up our discussion today. You kind of did a great job of summing it up, that going back, you know, we do have to trust ourselves. We have to trust, however you put it, I put it, God, the universe, infinite, however, you know, you put it out there, that we do the best we can. We do with what we know and what we have available to us to make decisions, and we do the best. But also don't be afraid to shake things up a little bit. And if we need to, if we feel that our life is not going fully where we want it to go, with understanding that, you know, we got to remember that there are people that are going to be involved in that, but sometimes you can't always worry about them. You know, they got to worry about themselves too a little bit. And sometimes you got to think about you first and go forward mindfully of how it might affect others. So with that, any other last thoughts, anybody?
My last thought is just to watch what future you're allowing for yourself. Like, be observant of that, because that's something that is kind of smacked me in the face this week, is the possibility that, because I'm about to go experience something that I hope is going to change my health situation, I've had to confront the possibility of being well. Like, I haven't been well in so long, and my life is basically built around my challenges and my disabilities. And this week I've had to confront the possibility of, what if I was well again? What if I wasn't in pain all the time? What if, you know, it wasn't a energy expenditure for me to get on a phone call with somebody? Or, you know, what if I didn't have to count my spoons all day? I don't like consciously count them, but you know, I know that I have a certain amount of energy, and I can use, this is going to take so many spoons, this is going to take so many spoons, then I'm out of spoons, you know, and then I'm in a spoon deficit for the rest of the day at 8 o'clock in the morning. You know, so, but what if none of that existed? What if I could do anything I wanted to do because I wasn't limited by that anymore? And that is, you know, it sounds so simple, but when you have lived with disabilities for such a long time, it's not a simple thing. In fact, it's like a mind-blowing thing to even allow it to enter into my brain and fully settle in, because there's this filter up there that's always, it's unconsciously always filtering, well, yeah, I would love to do that, but, you
Yeah,
know,
but
I can't. I can't. Yeah, but that's right, Laura. You know that but. And to think, and you too, we're both looking at this possibility of an entirely new life, an entirely new experience. And just to be open to that is huge. So I would just ask everybody to be open to that for your life as well.
Thank you. Some great thoughts there. Anybody else? Sounds like we're done. So with that, I'm just going to call it a wrap for the Saturday Morning Mastermind. You can find us on Facebook, Mindset Mastery Collective, and there you can find all the ways to join us here on the Zoom and be a panelist and discuss the current book we're on. So I can't remember the name of it right now, but anyway, The Midnight Library. Sorry, my brain's just totally by Matt Haig. And share your thoughts and feelings. We're also on YouTube at Mindset Mastery Collective, and then we have our website, mindsetmasterycollective.com. All those places, you can find out more about us and join us. And so with that, see you next week on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye.
Love you all. Thanks.